Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP, and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Today we're talking about the United Way of Greater Nashville. Now, you know, a lot of people may be familiar with the name United Way and know that the organization makes an impact on the community, but you may not know exactly what the United Way does or how far-reaching the impact actually is. Buckle up because things are about to change. Here's a little history. The United Way Worldwide says that the organization got started back in 1887 in Denver, Colorado, when 5 people, a woman, a priest, 2 ministers, and a rabbi committed to work together to try to make their community a better place. They coordinated their efforts and conducted a single fundraising campaign and then supported 20 local health and welfare agencies to address the needs that they saw around them. 135 years later, yes, you heard me right, 135 years later, there are now over 1,000 local United Ways, each operating independently, but connected by the goal of taking a cooperative approach into identifying local needs and then meeting them by coordinating local resources like volunteers, nonprofits, companies, and donor support. The United Way of Greater Nashville is over 100 years old and reaches 9 counties here in Tennessee. And now it has a new CEO. Erica Mitchell has been with the United Way of Greater Nashville for over 14 years and just stepped into her new role as the CEO at the start of this year. So let's meet her. Erica Mitchell, welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thank you, Khalil. So glad to be here.
Really happy to have you here. All right, so I gave a little bit of the history and kind of describe how the United Way functions overall. But I want to hear from you. You're the big boss.
Sure. So I think it's interesting because when I started at United Way, I wasn't exactly sure what United Way did.
Okay.
But I always love to start with the mission. So we unite the community to mobilize resources so that every child, individual, and family thrives. And what that really looks like is we unite. So we bring people together, we bring organizations, multiple sectors. So think about business, nonprofit, government, community members, et cetera. We bring people together so that we can identify and find out what are the community's greatest needs around health and human services. And then we fund really excellent nonprofit organizations to meet those needs. I'll say kind of our secret sauce is that we bring those multiple organizations together to work collaboratively as well on some of the greater needs in the community. That could be grade level reading, that could be homelessness. There are any number of issues, workforce development. And I really think that's the secret sauce of United Way in being able to bring those organizations together.
Now, you said when you started there, you didn't really know what it was. What did you think the United Way was? Because I'm sure, like myself, you grew up understanding and knowing about the organization, that it existed, but not exactly what they did. When you started, what did you think they did?
I thought they did, and let me just put it in air quotes, good things, right? Okay. So I knew the name, and I think so many people know the name. And again, not exactly sure what that is, but I didn't know they worked in education or financial stability, health, meeting basic needs. I didn't recognize them as being a safety net for the community. I wasn't exactly sure. I knew about philanthropic organizations and being able to provide philanthropy funding to nonprofits that were doing really excellent work. But I wasn't exactly sure how all of those things came together for United Way. So it's been a great learning for me, a great education.
Do you have a sense of how people here in Middle Tennessee understand everything that the organization does?
I think probably very similar to how I understood United Way when I first started. Again, it's so broad. So I think most people know the name. There's a lot of great brand recognition. The name is familiar. But it's still I'm not exactly sure what you do. Mm-hmm. So it's been part of my job and responsibility will be to go out and explain and to share more and educate folks on the good work of United Way.
So let's break that down a little bit. I see that there's several major pillars or priorities, including breaking the cycle of poverty.
Yes.
Giving kids equal chance, improving health, meeting our neighbors' basic needs, and continuing ongoing tornado response. A lot of different priorities.
A lot of different priorities. And the way that I would put those together, we call them the building blocks of life, really. We used to organize them, I'll say pretty simply in terms of education, financial stability, health, basic needs. What you just read is kind of an action step on what we're doing in each one of those areas. And I think the importance behind that is if you think about someone who receives a high quality education, typically they go on to have better financial outcomes. They typically will go on to have hopefully better health outcomes. Their basic needs are met. But all of those different areas, breaking the cycle of poverty, giving kids an equal chance, that's around education, meeting basic needs. All of those things work together in tandem, and it allows for people to have healthy lives and hopefully lays a foundation for thriving.
Can you give me an idea of some of the specific programs, particularly for like giving kids an equal chance or breaking the cycle of poverty?
Sure. So if you think about around giving kids an equal chance, we're really speaking about laying a strong education foundation. And so that could be anything from nonprofit organizations that we provide funding to, like say it could be Pencil, it could be Salama Urban Ministries. There are any number of organizations that are doing tutoring and after-school programming. It could be mental health services that are provided by organizations like STARS or Oasis Center. But then we also provide some services in collaboration. So starting in early childhood, we have an early childhood program called Read to Succeed. And we partner with community-based childcare centers so that they have high-quality learning environments for students between birth all the way up to age 5. So it's broad, it's varied, and I think sometimes that's the reason it's a little bit difficult to understand. But I think when you think about, again, health, human services, and that which allows for laying the foundation for folks to have a really strong start in life, we're all about helping people thrive.
You guys are taking on some big issues and that the community is really struggling with. How do you measure success when you're trying to move the needle? Because these are such huge issues that you all are facing and tackling.
Yeah, they are big issues, sometimes seemingly issues that stay really deeply entrenched. And so I think some of that varies. So, for example, for the nonprofit organizations that we fund, we have certain measurements that we're looking for. They actually tell us in many cases, these are the areas that we're able to measure, and here's some of the things that we're able to accomplish. We give them an area or an outcome that we say, we're trying to accomplish this for the community in which you reside. How can you help us accomplish that goal? And so we establish those metrics together. And then in other cases, it's working with communities or working with local government to find out how can we contribute to what your goals are. I think about work like, for example, we have a partnership with the city of Nashville around financial empowerment. And so we work with them on providing free financial counseling and coaching to anyone, regardless of income. And they help us in terms of we establish those metrics together on the number of individuals we're trying to reach, or how many, the credit scores that we're trying to improve, or reduction in debt or increased savings, et cetera. So many different ways to go about establishing those metrics. But I think what you'll hear throughout the conversation is it's all done in collaboration.
How do you all vet and evaluate the nonprofits that you work with?
Yeah, that's a great question, because right now, Khalil, we're in the process of going through an RFP. So we have a request for proposal process currently underway. And I think it's a fantastic way for people to get involved with United Way and to learn more about who we are. So we bring in volunteers who can be a part of the process. We provide the training so that they know exactly what they're looking for, but they will read the applications of nonprofits that apply for funding to United Way. They'll go on site visits. They'll see what the budgets are. They'll be able to ask questions about what the nonprofits are doing and to dig more deeply into the type of work that they are providing to the community. So again, you get a glimpse of, well, here are the needs within the community. Here are some of the nonprofits and the work that they're doing. But they provide us with recommendations on how we fund nonprofits in the various communities that we serve.
Volunteers are doing this.
Volunteers are doing it. Well-trained volunteers, I might add.
Yes. Okay, so what is that process like? If I just say, hey, I'm going to volunteer with the United Way, what's that process like? How are you guys getting me from being interested to becoming well-trained? Okay,
so Khalil says, I want to raise your hand. I want to be a part of this.
I want to be a part of this.
Let's go. So you want to be a part of this. You would reach out to our team. Our team would then provide you with, we do an overview of a little bit of United Way background, what we are in the community to do. Like, here is what we do, and here's why we do what we do. Here's an overview of the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. We'll talk with you a little bit about the organizations that you might be able to that you'll receive applications on. We'll talk a little bit about the types of things you might see in an application. We'll also talk with you about not having bias as you go into reading an application. We think that's also important because you have a variety of organizations, some small, some large. Some have access to professional grant writers and some do not. We're more so interested in what organizations are able to do for a community, how they've been connected into a community, and being able to provide that kind of level playing field. And then we'll walk you through some interview tips. We'll walk you through kind of assessment as far as reading through application, and then we'll give you applications to read.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like a wonderful process. Pretty simple and smooth.
It's pretty simple and smooth.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekolona. I'm talking with Erica Mitchell, the new CEO of the United Way of Greater Nashville. Okay. I want to talk about people in the community who qualify for the ALICE designation. ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed.
Yeah.
What some people would call the working poor.
Yes.
It's a big issue here in Davidson County.
It is. It's a big issue across the state. And I think it's important to note because most of the time we think about poverty in terms of maybe its federal poverty level. Across the state of Tennessee, that percentage is right around 13%. Mm-hmm. But that federal poverty level doesn't take into consideration things like what is the cost of living in your geography. So it is a standard that is applied kind of writ large across the contiguous United States. So, it costs more to live in Nashville, say, than it does in Nyota, Tennessee, right? But the same standard is applied. What ALICE does is it takes into consideration your geography, cost of living, but it also includes things like if you have childcare, includes things like a cell phone bill, things that we would consider kind of basic need. Like, these are the things that people would build into their budget. And so for I guess, a frame of reference, federal poverty level for a family of four is roughly $31,000 a year. Mm-hmm. $31,000 for four people. Mm. ALICE takes all of those other aspects into consideration. And it's saying it's not 13% of the folks who are living at a level of poverty. That there's an additional 30% that we haven't considered. So when you think about it, across the entire state of Tennessee, we're talking about 43% of the folks who are living at some level of poverty. Within Davidson County, the numbers are very similar. I believe it's around 47%.
Wow. So
almost nearly half of the community is living at some level of poverty, and that could be paycheck to paycheck, or it could be homelessness. So it has a lot more implications than we consider when we consider only the federal poverty level of 13.
So when somebody's standing in Publix or Kroger,
mm-hmm.
and it's a line of 10, mm-hmm. nearly half of those folks
That's right.
are ALICE designated.
That's exactly right. That's
pretty shocking.
Well, it's shocking, and I think the other thing is, these are our neighbors. These mm-hmm. are the folks who may be behind the cash register. This could be your barista, folks that we are coming in contact with every single day. We don't necessarily give it those considerations, but again, as the cost of living continues to increase, that problem continues to grow and be a challenge. So this is the issue. When we think about the work of United Way, we say that we are working in the service of ALICE. I think it allows us to talk more freely and more clearly about who it is that we serve. And it also paints, again, a different picture of the types of challenges that we're trying to address.
Okay, so I want to talk about that in relation to your role as the CEO. Mm-hmm. No matter if it's a nonprofit or a corporate entity, sometimes CEOs can be a little bit detached from the people, particularly not only the people who work for them and with them, but the people that they're serving. Mm-hmm. You understand this. You're out here in Nashville living, yet you understand that nearly 47% of let's just talk about Davidson County residents are really struggling. How does that change your interactions when you're not in the office?
Yeah. So I'll say that one of the things that I'll say delighted about is my position prior to taking on the CEO role was that of Chief Community Impact Officer. So my role and responsibility was rooted in community. That's why I came to United Way to begin with. I wanted to be closer to community. I wanted to hear more about what was happening at the community level. Are there things that are I'll say positive, strong, that we should be accelerating? Where are the gaps? And being rooted at the community level, I think, gives you such just a stronger lens stepping into the CEO role. There's not the detachment, and I really want to continue staying very closely connected. I always want to say, for my successor, I want to move out of her way, let her have her lanes for sure. But I also want to stay very connected to community, and I also want the organization. So every department needs to be connected and understand what the mission is by being a part of that up close and personal.
How does that stance really help the United Way be everything that it can? Because, again, there's a lot of folks who are doing good work but aren't so connected with community. And look, where we're at here in 2025. Folks, we all need community more than ever.
We need community more than ever. But we also need to not make assumptions on what community needs. And so if we are truly going to work in the service of, we need to be connected to in a very real way. I see that as, yes, we're volunteering, we're getting engaged, we're hosting community gatherings, we're able to listen, hear the voice from community members. Those are things that we should be doing on a consistent basis so that we have the voice of community in our ear, and we're not making assumptions about what the community needs, but we're actually working in the service of.
You're the CEO now. It looks like it fits. How's it feel?
Feels great.
Yeah.
It does. It feels good. And I think primarily, again, I'm excited to be able to bring the community perspective to the CEO role. It's typically a role that is occupied by someone who's coming from the development side, the fundraising side of the house. I've had the experience, the opportunity and kind of the gift of being able to work across multiple departments within the organization. So I'm community-centric, but community-oriented from my previous role. But I worked with the development department, and I worked across multiple areas. So I have a little bit of a line of sight in each one of those areas. But again, being community-centric, I think, is so critical from a leadership standpoint because it gives us our why. It makes it much more clear why we're doing what we're doing.
Where do you see, I'm sure you're still getting acclimated to your role and you have a specific day-to-day right now. But let's go a year into the future. What do you think your day-to-day is going to look like? What do you think, how would you like to have grown as a CEO?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that, so right now it is lots of listening sessions, and that is primarily engaging our corporate community, our nonprofit community, listening to our donors, listening to our stakeholders. And I think that continues. That's a thread we need to pull throughout, regardless. A year from now, like we're going through a strategic planning process right now, a year from now, I would like for us to be in a position where we have heard enough that we have a strong strategic plan that's ready for implementation. People are excited about that, and they believe in the direction of the organization. Yeah.
How do you plan to gin up excitement within, people across all the areas that you serve?
Yeah, that's a great question. How do you gin up excitement? Are we singing and dancing? I'm not sure.
Hey.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, again, when people feel connected to the work, I think that gins up excitement, because if you have a belief in what you're doing, and we have a lot of, our organization is filled with people who are very passionate about the service of community. And I think that in and of itself, so if we start, I'll say, hitting the right targets and people are excited about the direction and the plan, I think that in and of itself gins up a level of excitement, but then you actually have to do what we say you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And I think being able to put the plan in place, but then to say the resources are there and the strategies and the action plans are there to actually move things forward. People want to see things move and not just have the words, but also have the deeds to go with it.
We're going to take a break in a second, but I do want to ask this question. A lot of times when we think about the issues, when we think about community, we can think in the constraints of politics. The United Way of Greater Nashville helps everybody. Mm-hmm. how are you all planning to dance with the political movements of the region as you go about serving community?
Yeah, I have often, I'll say in recent months, what I've shared with our team is that we serve everyone. We serve everyone. We work with everyone. When we say that we unite the community, we mean that. We unite and we work with everyone. Our mission never changes. Political winds may change, but our mission remains very much the same. And so we'll continue to do the work that we know is required and continue working with everyone to advance those goals and strategies.
All right, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Erica Mitchell as we hear about the road that led her to her current position as the new CEO of the Greater United Way of Tennessee. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from Burr and Foreman Law Firm, serving clients with transactional, litigation, and regulatory needs. Discovering how each client defines a win and working with them every step of the way to achieve it. Burr.com. Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Ekolona, and this is Nashville. Today, we're joined by Erica Mitchell, the CEO of the United Way of Greater Nashville. Erica, really happy and honored that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yes. Okay. So I want to talk about growing up.
Okay.
And everything. You dedicated your life to serving others. But let's step back.
Okay.
A little bit. You grew up outside of Knoxville.
Yes.
When you were young, your parents decided to move you and your two older brothers out to the country. What was it like and why did they make that decision?
So my parents they grew up in Mississippi and they moved to Tennessee because of my father's work. Mom and dad were kind of getting established and beginning to do some work in real estate, and they owned a piece of land. And so they hadn't thought about it before, but someone said, why don't you build a property on your land? And so at any rate, they moved out to Louisville, Tennessee. It was interesting. I had never lived in a more rural community and tiny little area, handful of African-American farmers in the area. So when we looked out, they built a home and we looked out our front doors and we saw cow pasture. We saw tobacco fields up the road. But it was interesting because there weren't very many children around. So my brothers and I became best friends. And man, we played hard. It was an incredible childhood. We rode dirt bikes. We built things. We dug things and blew things up and set things on fire. And,
yes.
We were pretty rambunctious, but we played outdoors a lot. But we became very, very close as a result of that.
Did your parents become farmers? You're living around all these other farmers.
We're living around all these farmers. And I think to hear them tell it, they moved to that land because they had intended on becoming self-sustaining. They wanted to have a farm. They wanted to raise their own food. That was the initial plan. Not sure why that didn't come to fruition, but some of those elements did. Yeah.
You said you got really close with your older brothers.
Yeah.
Talk to me about them.
So 2 older brothers. I was the nagging younger sister, which they would still call me today in the best of ways. But I mean, it's fun when I think about how we grew up. Every Saturday morning it was cartoons, right? And then we would go outside and literally build things. Both of my brothers became engineers over time. And so when I think back about the way that we played was, okay, Erica, today we're going to build a water filtration system. Like literally, that's what my brother would say. And it was sticks and rocks and sand and dirt and mud. And he would help us build and navigate. And we were very curious kids. We went up into the woods and we would bring home turtles and reptiles and other crawling things and hide them under the bed. And, we were curious. We had a lot of fun. And what I remember most about that time is, yes, the time spent with them, because they were playful, protective of little sister. But we just enjoyed being on the land. There was something about I don't know, there's a peace, there's almost a sanctity. It felt good to be on that land.
Okay, so what if anything from that part of your life, what do you carry with you, and how do you try to implement some of those things and keep those around in your life currently now as an adult?
So, and the thing that I realized about my parents is that they came from very little, and their goal was to make a very different life for us. And I watched my dad work exceptionally hard to make that happen. We watched that ebb and flow, kind of go up and down at times, but overall, we had a very, I'll say a privileged life in many ways. And I say that because I still remember going to high school in the city of Knoxville and then coming back home out into the county. I remember walking around on that land and feeling the difference in the air. The air felt different. It smelled different. And there was just a moment of realization that you have something that is different. And so there's a lot of gratitude to my parents for that.
That hard work that they put in.
The hard work that they put in.
To give you and your brothers an environment where you could then be adventurous and discover things.
Be adventurous, discover things, dream, hope. And I think all of that, realizing that was a gift to us, and everyone doesn't have that. But they instilled in us the desire to see that not only for ourselves, but for other people.
Okay, so I want to jump forward a little bit. I
Okay.
understand that when you were in college, you thought you would study engineering like your older brothers.
Like the older brothers.
But you didn't like it?
Maybe I didn't know enough about it. I went to college, North Carolina State University, and I thought that I would study engineering. It was an engineering school. Both of my brothers had gone to school to study engineering. I loved math. I went through an introduction to engineering course, and I kept waiting for my discipline to pop up. It didn't resonate with me in the way that I thought it would. So I only went through a couple semesters and ended up changing my major to business. I did that because my dad was a business and econ major. I thought, well, I want to be like Dad, so why wouldn't I major in business? And so I did. But it also allowed me to, I'll say, kind of diversify the interests a bit. I wasn't sure what I would do with that business degree. I thought that would turn into, you graduate, you work a couple of years, you go get an MBA, and then you figure it out from there. So that was the plan. The plan was disrupted.
So talk to me about that, because I love it in these conversations that we have on the show and just in life. They have the adage, man makes plan and God laughs. God definitely laughed.
Oh man, he had a good laugh.
He had a real hearty one.
Good hearty laugh.
Okay, so his name is Greg.
Yes.
Tell me what happened. How did you two meet?
How do we meet? We always call it the story. So after college, I moved back to Knoxville. I was working in the area. I was actually in Gatlinburg. And I was driving up the parkway, and I see this gentleman walking. And to be honest with you, I said, hey, look at that. There's a very handsome Black gentleman walking in Gatlinburg. You don't see that very often. Probably working, and I hope he has a great sale. And I moved on. I didn't realize that he had seen me as well in the car, and he actually got into his car to come and find me.
Okay.
So at this point, I'm driving back down the parkway. He's coming up the parkway. He throws up a hand. I was like, there's that guy. And so he's waving. I said, I'm going to wave too. I don't realize that he makes a U-turn to come back because he's looking for me, right? So he's like, I found her. So he makes a U-turn. In that moment, I said, I'm going to go back and find him.
Okay.
And so I make a U-turn to go back and find him, not knowing that he is behind me. So he's making another U-turn, right? So we're making all these U-turns. And I believe it was traffic light number 3. I was thinking, this is a bad idea. I don't know who that is, or he could be dangerous. Like, I just don't know, but I've got 2 hours, so let's just go find out. And I ended up looking over to my left, and he was in the car next to me, and he was mouthing, pull over, pull over.
Okay.
And so I pulled over and we went to lunch that day. And the rest is history.
And the rest is history. I love that story because, I mean, it's a different time and era. Some people would look at that now and be like, it's kind of creepy.
That's creepy.
But romantic.
Yeah.
At the same time.
At the same time.
And the fact that you were doing these constant U-turns around each other gives me the symbol of like a yin and yang, like a balance that is there. What is it like being married to Greg?
Wow, what a great question. I married my best friend. I married my best friend.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekolona. I'm talking with Erica Mitchell, who is the brand new CEO of the United Way of Greater Nashville. Now, from what I understand, there were things you thought you would never do: get married young, have kids young, be a homemaker, and homeschool the kids. But, God laughed at all of those things I just mentioned. He got a hearty
laugh at all of that plan.
Okay, so, what sparked in you as you are now a mother of 3 and you're at home teaching and tutoring? Did you ever look at yourself at one moment with the kids? Maybe they were running around and you're like, I never thought I would be here, but I'm here.
All the time. I thought, it was a combination of things. I didn't think that I would be here. There were good days. There were hard days. It was, am I doing enough? Am I living up to my potential? I went through that phase of, should I be doing more? Is it okay to be at home? You get a lot of different messages, and I will tell you, I look back on that time period, best time of my life. Best time of my life. All of it. Staying home. I was home for 10 years with my kids.
Yeah.
And just incredible bonding experience with them and being able to watch them grow and develop. And I had the gift of being able to teach my kids how to read, teaching them how to read, teaching them how to do math, teaching them how to just thinking and thinking more deeply about things and asking questions. And it's not that you don't have an opportunity to do that in other settings. It's just that I don't know that I don't think that I would have dug as deeply, I'll say. So I'm really grateful for the time at home with them. But it also gave me a love for education, which gave me a love for digging in and asking questions and wondering, do other kids have the same types of opportunities? Do they have the chance to dig as deeply? And what are we doing to ensure that kids have the greatest starts when it comes to education? That's the cornerstone, the building block to that thriving life. And so really my time at home is what led me to my career at United Way eventually, because I went back to school to pursue education and specifically policy.
So talk to me about that for a second, because a lot of times I myself am not where I thought. I thought by the time I graduated college in 95, shortly a few years later, I'd be some sort of a corporate attorney, maybe sports agent, married with 3 kids.
Yeah.
That is not the case.
That is not the case.
Now.
Yeah.
But I'm happy for it.
Yeah.
So when you're working with people, particularly younger folks who are coming in at the United Way, maybe younger volunteers or younger people who are working there that you've mentored and worked with over the years, when they have these ideas of where they're going to be, sometimes we need patience. Sometimes we need to understand a little bit more. And one thing does lead to another that helps us fulfill a very common word these days, our purpose. You just mentioned that this sparked that love for you. But as you see this now and you're stepping into this role as the CEO of the United Way of Greater Nashville, how are those moments fueling the work you do now? Your approach to this work as the leader of this organization so many people depend on.
I think that all, the collective whole of your experiences shape you, which it allows you to think about things differently, or the lens through which you view things. It's shaped by those experiences. And there's no question that from my vantage point, my life is it's different than anything that I would have drawn up for myself. I had drawn up my plan, right? And made choices at that time that, okay, I'm not going to move forward with that plan. I always say that I think that God draws up the better plan for you than you could even draw up for yourself. And I believe that there are just no coincidences. So I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be for this time, for the way that I'm made, for this time period in history, the exact geography that I'm supposed to be in, because this is where God has determined that I'm supposed to be. And so I'm really grateful for that.
You got 3 kids.
3 kids. Come on, 3.
Come on, 3.
Come on with my 3.
Talk to me about them.
Man, I am. I'm a little tongue-tied thinking about them. So in love with those 3. Mackenzie, Miles, and Matt, they are amazing young people. Kids will humble you and keep you on your toes. I think that you get to know yourself in ways that you probably never would once you take either have a child or bring a child into your home. And they humbled me in so many different ways. I am so grateful to call them, to be their mom. I'm really grateful for that. And so they are now 25, 27, and 29. And to see the young adults that they have become, thinking about all of the crazy, because let's just be honest, it's crazy sometimes. Yeah. It's a little crazy. But all of the crazy times that we had together, I laugh. I think some of my favorite times with them, I would give them what I would call amnesty day.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, listen, you won't even get in trouble. Tell me something that you wouldn't have told me if you thought you were going to get in trouble. Just lay it out there. Is there something that you have done? And just put it out there. And man, the hands were like, hands would go up, and they'd share all kinds of things, Khalil.
Yeah.
But I loved, again, the gift of being able to raise the kids and to see the young adults that they have become. And each one of them also has instilled within them this value of other people, of humanity, of giving back, of contributing. And so just really grateful to be a part of that.
Do any of your kids work in the nonprofit space now?
I have one.
Okay.
Well, I say that. Actually, I have 2.
Oh.
Yeah.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Come on. I love it.
So what do your kids think about their mother being in charge of this very important organization that does so much good work?
Yeah.
How do they feel about it?
There's a lot of pride. They shoot me text messages, from time to time, and we have a family group text, and they cheer me on. So I love having them as my personal cheerleaders, and just really they're very much encouraged. I mean, I appreciate being able to set an example for them growing up, and knowing that they have lived into some of that. I mean, both Greg and I both setting example. It's encouraging for me to hear from them that they gleaned things from my experiences when they were home. And to see the young adults that they have become, it's an incredibly proud mom moment.
All right, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Erica Mitchell, the new CEO and president of the United Way of Middle Tennessee. I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Today, we're speaking with Erica Mitchell. She's the new CEO of the United Way of Greater Nashville and Middle Tennessee. It's one of the largest nonprofits in our region, which seeks to, quote, unite the community and mobilize resources so that every child, individual, and family thrives, end quote. Erica, I'm having fun. So glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so you mentioned that you didn't know much about the United Way when you took the job. How did you discover the United Way? What made you apply for the job here?
Yeah. So prior to coming to United Way, I was working in policy, and I was missing a connection to community. I was wondering if the policies that we were pushing so hard on actually made a difference once they hit the ground. And so I had expressed to a colleague at the time that I really wanted to be closer to community. And when I say community, I really meant people at that time, the people that we were saying that we were pushing policy, in the service of, were those policies actually doing what we thought they were doing? Were they accomplishing what we thought or what we hoped? And so she said, you should look at United Way. And so at the time, United Way had a very short-term contract. There was a contractor role available in the education area. And I thought that could be interesting. And so my husband said, are you sure? I mean, literally it was a 6-month contract.
Mm-hmm.
And so in January of 2011, I applied for a role. And, again, just thinking about how you just never know how things will work out. And about 4 months in, they offered me a permanent role. Yeah. You just never know.
You never know, from contractor to CEO.
Yeah, you just never know.
Okay, so I understand Brian Hassett was the previous CEO of United Way of Greater Nashville, held the role for 7 years before retiring from a total, check this out, 47 years of service
47 years of
within
service.
United Way.
Yeah.
When you think of someone who's dedicated themselves 47 years to a cause and a mission, what comes to mind?
Well, I mean, first of all, it doesn't happen that much anymore, right? Like you just don't, at least you don't hear about that. And so he set such a tremendous example. He was quiet, introspective, introverted, but very passionate about community. And he would tell you, like, his story was very much rooted in community. He would tell you that when he grew up in the Bronx, that he had kind of fallen in with some folks and they were not doing the right things. And he said kind of my final straw was that a judge sentenced him to the Boys and Girls Club. And the Boys and Girls Club was where he kind of found refuge. And he started playing basketball, and they discovered that he's actually quite a brilliant individual, and basketball led him to college, and college eventually to the United Way. And so, you think about that. He set such an example of just the importance of, I'll say, remaining humble, keeping community at the center of everything that we do, and just being the same person in front of a camera that you are behind the scenes. I really love that about him.
And that's a style of leadership.
It is a style of leadership, and one I don't think that we often celebrate enough. I mean, we tend to celebrate the person who walks into the room and owns the room, and they have the big personality and the much more driving personality, and his was much more humble. But his quietness made you lean in. And I loved that about him. So I'm really grateful to have had that type of an example as someone who came before me.
How would you describe yourself as a leader?
I always struggle to answer that authentically because I need to ask my team that. I would say that I would strive to be more of that leader in the way that Brian said. That type of an example of where, again, you put people at the center. And I really do believe that if you, in terms of like your team, if you bring really smart people around the table and you really equip them well to do what they do best, that's how you have the strongest team and you have the strongest organization. And for the type of work that we do, putting people at the center is always going to be the winning combination.
You talked about community a lot.
Yeah.
And how important it is to you and at the core mission of the United Way. Here in Nashville and Middle Tennessee, as this region, do you believe that all of us, individuals, do you believe that we're willing to do what it takes to lift each other up, to become stronger and develop closer bonds as a community?
I think that maybe even increasingly so. I think that when you push on things and things become, your environment changes, if things become more difficult, you tend to, like, beautiful things can come out of hard things. And so I think that increasingly so, there's a desire to be more connected. And it's interesting because you think about how we have social media and so many different platforms for, I'll say, air quote, connection, but people feel more isolated than ever. I think that there is a heartfelt desire for people that people want to come together, that people want to be more connected. We see that even as volunteerism. People want to volunteer. They want to get engaged, and we see those numbers tick up because whether it's something you would like to see within the culture of an organization, like or it's more of an individual family saying, how do we give back to community because we recognize a need. I think there is a desire for more connectivity.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges the United Way is facing right now?
Goodness, I think There's a combination of things. I mean, obviously, from Health and Human Services standpoint, we'll continue to focus on what those main pillars of like breaking the cycle of poverty and giving kids an equal chance and meeting basic needs and things of that nature. I think that there's an importance and really a criticality around, I'll say, as our business community continues to grow, that there is a large embrace by the business community, new and old, of being a strong corporate citizen. We have tremendous examples of that within our corporate community, our corporate partners. And I think that, again, that should be the DNA of what Nashville and the surrounding area are about. If you are coming into the community, if you are establishing business here, in addition to bringing jobs into a community, you should also have a desire to contribute and give back to community. I think that's what this region is all about. And I think it's important to note that we are a community that doesn't leave people behind. And to that end, it means that we contribute. Everyone should be contributing.
So it's one thing to talk about something. It's a total another thing to kind of take action.
Yes.
You know, what you're saying to me makes me think of like the changing of narratives. You have this narrative. People have their own individual narratives and understandings about life and about a situation or a group of people or a community. But to volunteer, to put myself in there, is a changing of those narratives. Can you tell me, like working with someone, do you have an example of someone who completely came in knowing or believing one thing, but through this experience of volunteering, advocating, and then giving, was enlightened, so to speak?
I think that happens all the time, Some of the work that we do, for example, is around disaster recovery work. So if there is a tornado or a flood or whatever the case might be, and a lot of folks might think that, well, FEMA has come in and FEMA takes care of that, or, you know, your city government takes care of that. And to an extent that is true, but for those who are underinsured or who lack insurance altogether, there's a large gap. And so we're seeking to help bridge that gap. When people have an opportunity to go out and canvass a neighborhood and find out, for example, when we had the December 9 tornadoes, find out who's been impacted, but also maybe it's the conditions that people are living in. Maybe it's understanding that, I didn't realize that there was someone in my backyard who had such a deep need. Getting engaged and involved at a much more granular level allows us to understand our neighbors, I think, much more clearly. But it also hopefully cultivates that desire from, again, just from a human standpoint. What can I do to contribute? What can I do to give back? What can I bring to the table that improves and allows the community to flourish? Because this is how I've been endowed or gifted, and I can contribute in this way. So I think volunteering allows you to be that much closer so that you can understand the need.
Final question for you.
All right.
When you think of the Erica who walked into the United Way 14 years ago, how has she changed?
Oh, good grief. That Erica, I would say a few different things. One, obviously, I've had my questions answered to a certain degree about community and the desire to be closer to. That has happened. That stirred something in me, and it keeps me going back every day. So I would just say that Erica, who probably stepped in kind of naively thinking, let me just get my feet wet so I can go back and pursue the next thing. I found something I loved, and I want to continue to figure out how I can make the community thrive in collaboration with others. So, yeah.
Erica Mitchell is the president and CEO of the United Way of Greater Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Erica, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. It was great to meet you and great to talk with you.
Thanks, Cliff.
Thanks to you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Katherine Ceicys. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our technical director and board operator is Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music are Laurent and Namir Blade. Special thanks to Helena Harris. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. And the conversation never ends here. You can comment. Let us know what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message at 615-751-2500. Hit us up on social media, Blue Sky, Instagram, and for now, well, hit us up on Twitter. You might not like it, but hit us up anyway if you're on there. All right, this is Nashville. I'm Khalil Ekalona. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody, and be good to each other.